President is going nowhere just yet. That is a loud and clear message tonight as Kenya's third president, Mwai Kibaki, prepares to address yet another parliament. And the race to replace the president is still up in the air as legal teams fine-tune their briefs ahead of that titanic battle that begins on Monday. Now, this is KTN Prime on this Thursday, the 21st day of March 2013. In a short while, we'll be crossing live to our studios in Mombasa, where Ferdinand Omondi will be giving us the latest on what appears to be a new crackdown on the separatist group MRC. While here in Nairobi, James Smart is all set in Studio 2 for Livewire. And tonight, it's all about what the president-elect can and cannot do. Hello and good evening, I'm Joroge Mwaura, and these are the top stories we are following for you tonight. Kibaki stays on, President summons new parliament.
They had already sent a message across the country that we are not going to have these rallies.
No more rallies, court heeds government call. A time to reap, party stalwarts get nomination slots.
Issues of climate change have been with us for quite a number of years, and this is one way of mitigating against climate change.
Greener Kenya, or is it battle to save the forests? As we just mentioned, we begin here in Nairobi, where President Mwai Kibaki has in the last few hours directed the 11th Parliament to hold its first sitting a week from now. Now, both houses of Parliament will meet on the 28th of March here in Nairobi as the country awaits the outcome of the presidential petition. KTN's Catherine Omwantho begins our news coverage with a directive that comes just as parties completed their nomination of members to both houses.
When he signed off in Parliament late last year, it was almost certain that it would be Kibaki's final act in Parliament. But 3 months on, the President is back, calling a whole new session of Parliament. Amid the election standoff that is now before the Supreme Court, Kibaki has now ordered the first sitting of the 11th Parliament on the 28th of March. In a legal notice, the President is also calling members of the Senate to town. With a section of Parliament building still under renovation, the first sitting of the Senate will be held at the Kenyatta International Conference Center on the same day. Following the announcement, clerks of the National Assembly, Justin Bundi, and that of the Senate, Jeremiah Nyegenye, have asked individuals interested in being elected Speaker or Deputy Speaker to collect nomination forms from their offices.
The life of the intense Parliament is about to come to an end.
Political parties have already picked their representatives to fill in the nomination slots provided for in the Constitution, and like before, party officials are the biggest beneficiaries. In the National Assembly, nominees, TNA took 3 of the 12 available spots, giving one to its chairman, Johnson Sakaja. URP and ODM also took 3 slots each, with the Prime Minister's brother Oburu Odinga picking up one of ODM's slots. The Wiper Democratic Party and Ford Kenya took 1 each. Among the nominees, 3 of them are women, Amina Abdallah and Janet Teya of TNA and Sarah Kerere of URP, bringing the total number of women in the National Assembly to 65, the largest in Kenya's history, but still short of the minimum 33% envisaged by the new constitution.
Elections are a very expensive exercise, and majority of women cannot afford to run an election. If you look at the number of women that came from the 47 seats, they are basically assisted by the team they were working with, because campaigning in a constituency is so difficult, let alone campaigning in a county. Some have about 6 constituencies, some have about 10. So it's a huge task for one person to contest in a larger area. On top of it, it does not even come with a budget. It just comes with a name and no budget on top of it.
Though no woman was elected into Senate, the law states that parties shall nominate 16 women. And like the National Assembly, those slots too have been distributed to mainly party loyalists.
There is definitely a problem in the way our society works. Ideally, the only problem we had was to get a mechanism. The principle is there, it's just to find a mechanism to implement the gender rule.
This government now has a challenge of implementing the 2/3 gender rule by the next election, which will be around 2017. This is stipulated by the Supreme Court on the gender rule. But this means that political party leaders must ensure that they do nominate more women into their parties and into political positions and put them out there so that they have more exposure politically as we head to the next election.
And as we look back at the last 5 years,
and ironically, it is once again up to Mwai Kibaki, the man who would have now been preparing to go home, to kickstart that process. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
Let's go to the coast now, and Mombasa Republican Council spokesman Mohammed Rashid Muraja was rearrested last night in the wake of recent killings that occurred in the coast region during the election-nearing period. Muraja said he was questioned over the police killings in Changamwe on the eve of the general election and the attack in Chumani polling station where 5 security officers were hacked to death. He was, however, arraigned in court and charged with oathing. And as Ferdinand Omondi reports, even as Muraja was remanded in custody, the actual murderers remain at large.
Muraja was arrested last evening in Lunga near the Tanzania border at around 5 p.m. but discounted reports that he was arrested while crossing in from Tanzania. Muraja claimed he was en route from Vanga, where he had gone to see a relative. He spent his night at Lunga police station and was transferred to Diani, where he spent the better part of the day with investigators seeking answers to the killings in Changamwe and Mishomoroni in Mombasa and Chumani in Kilifi, where 10 security officers were killed on the eve of the general election.
Wanasema kama ni MRC ndio ambao walipanga matatizo yale. Na ile hali sisi kila siku tunaiambia serikali ijaribu kuchunguza kwa wingi zaidi juu ya matatizo yanayotokea. Lakini kwamba lolote linalotokea mara moja kwa moja wanasema ni MRC. Na ile hali MRC wanafuata mambo yao kisheria, tuko mahakamani.
At the Kwale court, Muraja was charged with engaging in unlawful oaths to commit other offences. He denied the charges. Prosecution asked the court to deny him bail on the basis that he was facing a similar charge at the Chief Magistrate's Court in Mombasa. The prosecutor also expressed fears that Muraja would interfere with an ongoing investigation against him since other culprits had not been apprehended, and suggested that his release would escalate the violence which has of late been witnessed in the coast region. Principal Magistrate Elizabeth Macharia remanded Muraja in custody until the 12th of April, with a mention set for the 4th. In the same court, 3 other suspected MRC members were charged with preparation to commit a felony and possession of charms. The court heard that Fatuma Suleiman, Charike Said and Ali Rama, together with others not before court, were on the 20th of March found with 4 pangas, 1 axe and a bow, which were articles for use in connection with assault and charms meant to cause fear to persons. They too denied the charges and were remanded in custody until the 19th of this month.
Zile ni vitu ambavyo kwamba vimetengezwa ni watu maalum ili kuweza kuwatumia vijana kwa jina la MRC, lakini mimi nakataa kabisa kama ni MRC.
Once again, the Mombasa Republican Council finds itself on a collision course with the law, and one of its top leaders is arraigned in court. But yet again, the charges preferred against him have nothing to do with the killings that occurred in the coast region recently. That means the killers themselves remain elusive. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Kwale County.
Now let's stay with MRC for further clarification from Ferdinand Omondi. Now Ferdinand, MRC spokesman, as you've said, has been rearrested. Could there be other circumstances that led to his arrest?
Well, Njoroge, every time MRC leaders are arrested, there's normally a pattern that leads to their arrest. Remember last year they were arrested, and as early as March there was some there were some attacks in a voter mock election exercise in Malindi in March, and it was suspected that MRC members were involved. Then in September, 14 people were killed in Kilifi in an oathing exercise that was suspected to have been carried out by the MRC. A week later, Amason Kingi's bodyguard was killed in a rally where Amason, who was then the MP for Magarini and Fisheries Minister, was holding a rally. Now he is the governor-elect for Kilifi. Immediately after that, they began a crackdown, and first of all, they arrested the spokesman like they have done now. Then afterwards, they arrested the vice chairman, and later on the chairman, Omar Mamnuadzi. Of course, later on, they would be released after the senator-elect for Nairobi, Mike Sonko, paid their bond. So right now, there's also another pattern in that in the wake of the election period on March 3rd, the 4 policemen were hacked to death in Changamwe. Another 5 were killed at a polling station in Chumani in Kilifi. And then there was another policeman who was killed in Mishomoroni. And all these, the police say, are things or events linked to the MRC leaders. So right now, Omar Mraja has now been arrested, and he was questioned on that, in as much as the charges preferred against them had nothing to do with the killing. But we are seeing a pattern here. Violence erupts in Mombasa, MRC is suspected, the leaders are incarcerated. Njoroge.
Now, is it fair to say that the crisis, the MRC crisis, is escalating? Now, what can you tell us? Is MRC threat escalating? How is it on the ground?
Well, as it is right now, there is a security threat in the coast region, particularly in Kwale district. Like I mentioned, Kwale County rather. Like I mentioned earlier, there are those cases of violence that claim the lives of policemen. And even during the electioneering period, we noticed that the police sources I spoke to said that there were threats against police stations that suspected MRC members were planning to carry out attacks. At the same time, as recently as last week, we've been receiving reports that there's some sporadic killings going on, the Mungiki-style attacks actually on people. We're hearing that there are some people now walking around extorting money from people. If you do not give them what they want, they kill you. And I was able to see some of the pictures today, very worrying. People hacked 4, 5, 6, 7 times on the back of their heads, and it is indiscriminatory, women, children, and old men. So when this happens, and of course it's linked to the police, to the MRC, as the police say, something has to give, and that is why perhaps the leaders are being arrested and questioned as investigations are going on. But it is telling that so far in all these killings, the MRC have not been directly linked to them, and that is why perhaps Mohammed Mraja insists that they are innocent, because police so far have failed to link any of the leaders directly to the killings that are going on in the coast region.
Thank you very much, Ferdinando Mondi, our reporter at the coast, clarifying for us on the status of MRC cases. Now, Prime Minister Raila Odinga says CORD respects the law and will abide by the suspension of all planned political rallies across the country as ordered by the National Security and Advisory Committee. The top security organ in the country had issued the order saying the rallies have the potential of igniting violence during this period when tension remains high, with presidential petition yet to be determined. The Coalition for Reforms and Democracy had planned a series of Thanksgiving rallies starting this weekend. Linda Ogutu reports.
The directive by the top security organ comes just days after Prime Minister held a meeting in the coastal region of Mombasa following a visit by President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta to the area.
Tuendelee kuombea amani na umoja ya Wakenya, kwa sababu hiyo ndio njia pekee.
Hiyo kura yenu hiyo na ile ingine kutoka pembe zote za Kenya ili tupate sisi ushindi mkubwa kwa hiyo uchaguzi.
It is such meetings and utterances that the organ believes could render obsolete the gains made from the peaceful conduct of the March 4th general election. The committee maintains that the final word on the election and indeed its outcome rests squarely with the 6-member Supreme Court that has now mentioned the petition, paving the way for the judicial process. The committee has also taken a tough stance on hundreds of supporters of either side of the coalition. No crowd will be allowed to gather around the premises of the Supreme Court during hearings of the petition. Prime Minister Raila Odinga, though welcoming the decision, has not taken the manner in which it was communicated kindly.
The National Security Advisory Committee advises the National Security Council, in which I sit with the President. So there's no point in them advising me publicly.
His office had earlier in the day issued a statement in which it was categorical that the Coalition for Reform and Democracy had suspended all political activity until the Supreme Court rules on the presidential election petitions. The statement released by Raila's spokesman says the Prime Minister had not planned any rallies in any part of the country in the coming days, including the weekends. According to the statement, the rallies were suspended after consultations. The statement further urges Raila supporters to remain calm and await the court's decision. Ordinary Kenyans have not been spared in what is largely seen as an assault on national security.
Kenyans, I think, have taken their frustrations to the social media. They have taken also their issues to the social media, and that's where the next frontier.
The committee has ordered the National Cohesion and Integration Commission and security agencies to act on those propagating hate speech and violence in the social media. Linda Ogutu, KTN.
Well, that story leads us to a big question tonight. We are asking you, do you support the government ban on political rallies? Do you support the government ban on political rallies? Send your yes or no response with brief comments to the number 8040. We'll be sampling your views at the end of Livewire, and of course give you the poll results at the end of Livewire. Well, for the last few days, the country has been calm, even if slightly anxious, as various parties filed applications following court's decision to challenge the presidential election held earlier this month. Now, this is no doubt a critical period in the country's history. For the first time in this country, a presidential petition is being filed before a constitutionally protected and independent court. Now, granted, the stakes are very high for both parties. On the one hand, the Prime Minister Raila Odinga is convinced that someone stole his election victory, while on the other, President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta is just as persuaded that he won the election fairly and ought to lead Kenya as the fourth president. Of course, it's only the Supreme Court that can resolve that standoff, and that is a mandate the 6 judges have from our Constitution. Now, what is most important, however, is for each party to commit to respect that august decision when it finally comes. In the meantime, we must agree with the religious leaders who have asked for calm from both sides of this political dispute as the judges do their work. The suspension of political rallies must thus be seen in this light. Our hope, therefore, is that this will be observed by all political players throughout this period. After all, Kenya is indeed bigger than all the contending parties in this dispute. And that is the notebook for this week. Now, the International Criminal Court's pre-trial chamber has allowed ICC Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda to amend charges against President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta. In her application to the pre-trial chamber, Bensouda had sought to add to the document containing Kenyatta's charges that victims were killed by gunshot in Naivasha during the 2007-2008 post-election violence. In a written statement, the pre-trial chamber was keen to note that the decision to grant Bensouda her request has no impact on the schedule of the case before the trial chamber, and that its decision is separate and has no implication on other requests made by the defense before to have the case referred back to the pre-trial chambers for consideration following the withdrawal of one witness from the case list of evidence. Consequently, the withdrawal of this witness is what caused the dismissal of charges against former public servant Ambassador Francis Mudhaura. Here in Kenya, it is up to 6 judges to decide whether Uhuru Kenyatta will be Kenya's 4th president or not. Here at KTN, we continue with our series on the man and woman who will make that president-setting decision. And tonight, Rita Tinina turns the focus on Dr. Smoking Charles Wanjala, law lecturer, researcher, and author.
It was the irregular reappointment of the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission Director Aaron Ringera and his 2 deputies, Dr. Smoking Wanjala and Fatuma Sichale, in August 2009 that turned the spotlight on a man who had served as the deputy sheriff to the KACC boss, Dr. Smoking Wanjala. Dr. Wanjala was appointed the deputy director in charge of prevention at the now defunct KACC in September of 2004. But even before his term expired, President Mwai Kibaki reappointed him alongside his boss Aaron Ringera and fellow Deputy Director Fatuma Sichale to a second 4-year term. The contract renewal caused a public outcry. Following 2 weeks of controversy, Dr. Wanjala opted to resign in September 2009 after Parliament revoked the reappointment of the 3, saying the President overstepped the House and the KACC Advisory Board. Close to 2 years later, Dr. Wanjala landed himself a job at the highest court in the land. Before his stint at the KACC, he had spent 20 years at the University of Nairobi, where he taught international law, international human rights law, land law, and criminal law. Dr. Wanjala is a renowned legal scholar, researcher, and publisher with many publications to his name, including books and articles in the fields of law, human rights, and governance. He holds a Bachelor of Law degree from the University of Nairobi, a Diploma in Law and Practice from the Kenya School of Law, a Master of Laws degree from Columbia University, and a Doctorate in Law from Belgium. Dr. Smoking Wanjala is a member of the Judicial Service Commission. He served as a Joint Secretary to the Ndungu Commission that investigated illegally acquired land and is credited with overseeing the compilation and writing of the Ndungu Report. As one of the founder members of the Center for Law and Research International, Clarion, which pioneered civic education in the country, Dr. Wanjala was involved in the struggle for constitutional reforms in Kenya in the 1990s. But for now, as a judge of the Supreme Court, the glare of the country and indeed the international community is on him and his fellow judges as they deal with a presidential petition that will no doubt set a legal as well as a political precedent for the country. Rita Tinina, KTN, Nairobi.
And apologies for that little problem at the beginning of that clip. As the country awaits that big verdict, religious leaders in the country are cautioning politicians against making reckless statements. Catholic bishops and the National Council of Churches, in separate statements, called for calm ahead of the hearing of the petition.
Since the presidential results have been contested, we call upon all political parties, all coalitions, to give Supreme Court time and the peace that they desire at this moment so that they can effectively take up their responsibility. We plead with political parties and coalitions, therefore, to desist from holding any meetings or rallies that could turn provocative. We should understand that people are anxious, and therefore any attempts to engage them cannot be seen in good spirit.
Your Honors, it is imperative that you refrain from statements and actions that will provoke hatred and tensions between your supporters. Rather, promote national unity and peace both in action and word. Of greatest importance is that both of you must endeavor to encourage your supporters to patiently and peacefully wait for the ruling of the Supreme Court and to accept whatever verdict is given.
You may or may not be aware, but today, March 21st, 2013, is observed as the International Day of Forests and the Tree, a day set aside by the United Nations to raise awareness on sustainability and management, conservation, and sustainable development of all types of forests for the benefit of current and future generations. However, despite all these efforts, we continue to destroy the very forests we need for our survival. KTN's Eric Njoka explains the importance of the day and why deforestation continues to deprive Kenya's economy.
Towards a 10% forest cover, wajibu wa kila Mkenya. That's the theme of this year's International Day of Forests. But if deforestation continues to be a serious problem that needs concerted efforts, will Kenyans stand up to the call and make a difference?
Around 1.6 billion people depend on forests for their livelihood. In fact, forests cover 1/3 of the Earth's landmass, thus performing vital functions around the world. But these functions have slowly suffered as a result of human activity, mainly deforestation.
We have resource efficiency. We are looking at the consumption and production of materials, where we want to reduce the consumption of material, reduce the amount of energy we consume, minimize the waste we generate, conserve water in our production processes.
Kenya could be losing an average of about 6 billion shillings annually through increased cases of deforestation. A joint report released by the United Nations Environment Programme says poor implementation of forest laws have been blamed on deforestation, denying the economy billions of shillings.
Our ministry has got, as I said, 120 million seedlings. This is the time for Kenyans now to come out and plant trees.
To curb the wanton degradation, a 155 million shilling project has been set up on the shores of Lake Naivasha. The aim of the project is to put up a 50-kilometer fence around the Mau Ebru forest with the goal of protecting one of Kenya's key forest ecosystems.
We see that this is a project that will benefit very much the community, the immediate community. It will also benefit the wider community. It will stop illegal loggers and illegal charcoal burners going into the forest.
Kenya's 5 water towers, namely Mau Forest Complex, Mount Kenya, the Aberdares, Mount Elgon and Cherangani, feed filtered rainwater to rivers and lakes and provide more than 15,800 million cubic meters of water per year, playing a key role in the fight against climate change as it contributes to the balance of oxygen, carbon dioxide and humidity in the air. Eric Njoka, KTN.
A very important story and issue, and we are very, very honored to have in our studio Dr. Isaac Kalua. He's the chairman of the Kenya Water Towers Agency. Dr. Kalua, thank you for coming on to KTN Prime.
Nice to have you, have me here.
Let's talk about the celebration first. How and where was the day celebrated, if at all?
This is an international day that was set up by the UN agencies led by the FAO. It was proclaimed by all the international agencies so that it is a day to celebrate, a day to create awareness, yes, a day to make the communities around the world to understand about forests. And it has been celebrated on the 21st of March over the years, and known to you also, yes. and it's very interesting also. On the 22nd is the International Day of Water. The two can never be separated. Yes, it's indeed. A marriage that took place, and yes, are inseparable.
Did we celebrate it in any way? What activities
today
were there to
was a very great day. It was very well celebrated today, and I thank the Minister for Forestry because he created time to join the UN agencies, the various civil societies, and the Forestry, Kenya Wildlife Service. There was a tremendous event at the Ngong Forest, which is one of the places that needs to be very well protected, and a place that so many people, including the person in charge of the sanctuary and the forest, they have done a tremendous work that is worth being celebrated. So yes, very good speeches made today. FAO with the country leader and all the UN agencies were there to do a great job that was done today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, Kenya's had a disproportionate share of forest depletion. At one time it was so bad, it was down to what, 2.1%?
Yes.
Of forest cover. Now, what's the latest data on this? Have we improved? If not, why?
Tremendous improvement, and I would want to separate this because there is what is supposed to be forest cover, and there is the tree cover.
The tree cover,
and
yes.
You will realize these are very well selected words, and they are actually now entrenched in our constitution.
There's the forest cover,
yes,
and tree cover.
What's the difference? The ecology, the ecosystems, because you may be able to plant 2%, 5%, a few trees in your home, but that does not create a forest, because it needs to be an entire ecosystem. But generally speaking, in the language, because I would like to keep it very simple for the common person, for you to understand, and every other person, is that according to those kind of figures, of course, it rose from 1.7, very great efforts, and allow me to thank Kenya Forest Service. They have evolved from the times that they were taking care of forests using sticks, and they would be chased away with the power source, and today they have guns, and they have done their bit. There may be challenges that are there, but today we are talking of close to about 7%. But this is not in our forests alone. This is individual efforts in our homesteads, various institutions, the mangroves in the coastal region, and various other places. And therefore, you may be right, because it has been scientifically done to be about 6.7, 6.8%.
Dr. Kalua, are the people, the vast majority of whom are living below the poverty line, getting the message, and what is being done to help them? Because their poverty surely ensures that they will use a lot of this wood products. They use wood, firewood, charcoal. What's the way forward?
Unfortunately, the masses do not connect to all these stories.
They don't indeed.
It's a livelihood issue. It's something that we need to understand, the importance of forests in our lives, and the water towers that come and originate from these areas. But the people, unfortunately, do not connect to it. So
are we losing the battle?
We are losing the battle, but you see, with this kind of awareness, for me to be here to discuss about forests, it means that we are understanding the connectivity between forests and our economy towards our Vision 2030. There is no economy world over that will ever, and especially this part of the region, operate without water. Where do waters come? Where does water come from for the industry? It comes from the water towers, which is in the forest. Where does livelihoods engage? Most of our communities in this country live around the forest, and therefore it may look like we are losing it, but I think every single day awareness is being created. People are starting to understand. There are few efforts. While we are taking care of our forests, while we understand that there is danger in this particular area, and while so many institutions are making a lot of efforts, we are still losing trees to logging. We are still losing animals. You may realize, and that it was reported today, 75% of our animals live in the forest. And so many things. But I think we are creating awareness. People are starting to understand. But tell a person, a Kenyan person, to protect the forest and the environment, they will not understand. Show them how to make money. They will be there doing what it has to be done. So it needs to be done in a symbiotic way that people can relate to those who are downstream, can understand also and feel the same with those who are upstream, and it is compensation for all what is required.
Look into that camera. Say one final word to the people about our forests, about our water towers, about our conservation. Just talk to them.
Our country can only be as good as our efforts in protecting the environment. We must wake up, and all the agencies that are working in these areas must wake up and work together. It is only coming together that we are able to make things happen. We shall never make it if we pull our resources, our energy in different directions when we are talking about an environment that is for posterity. it is our responsibility to do what we have to do. Let's take care of our forest. Our forest is our future, and if we have to achieve Vision 2030 and MDGs, this is the future of our country. We must wake up and be participatory in all these exercises.
Dr. Isaac Kalua, thank you very much for coming on KTN Prime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Isaac Kalua there, Chairman, Kenya Water Towers Agency. Reminder of our big question now. We are asking, do you support the government's ban on political rallies? Send your yes or no response with brief comments to the number 8040. As I told you, we'll be sampling your views during the live wire program, and of course we'll be giving you results at the end of that program.
All coming up on the business bulletin, Treasury has released 2.7 billion shillings for the purchase of fertilizer ahead of this planting season. Also, we do know that the Higher Education Loans Board is looking for alternative source of funding, as the students who receive this money have refused to pay or are unable to pay. I have the details.
Welcome back to KTN Prime. Now the stage is set for the formal start of the devolution era as county assembly representatives take their oath of office tomorrow. And out of Western Kenya comes the amazing tale of a mechanic who went against all odds to win a seat in Vihiga. Now Josephat Munai, who has worked as a car repair specialist since 1978, is set to dust his overalls and pursue a somewhat cleaner career. Or is it? Our region reporter, Fredo Mulo, has more.
On the surface, Josephat is just an ordinary mechanic trying to scrounge his way into a daily income just like his colleagues. But beneath the dusty overalls and oily gloves is the undisputed leader of a county ward at least.
Wale watu ambao tulikuwa natuma huko kutuwakilisha, mara nyingi walikuwa wakienda kule wanadharau wale watu ambao wamewachagua kwenda kuwakilisha. Kitu ilinifanya niamue kwenda kwa county kama county representative, niende nitetee watu wangu.
After succumbing to machinations in the 2007 ODM party nominations exercise, Munai came back to Kisumu to lick his wounds, but not for long. His fellows back at home wanted him to give the seat a second shot, and this time he was successful. His agenda for the ward's residents remains simple: women, youth and the elderly.
Wengi wa wale vijana ambao wanataka kufunzwa kazi na hawana makao, hawana watu wa kuishi nao hapa Kisumu. Tupate plot kule reserve, tufungue garage ili tuanze kusaidia vijana wakitoka maboma zao wakija kujifunza kazi. Kuna constituencies zingine ambazo hao wazee wa over 60 years wanapata pension, lakini kwa ward yangu hakuna mtu mmoja ambaye ashawahi kupewa.
Munai will now shift base to Luanda in Western, where representation duties await him. The seasoned car specialist has trained most of his fellow mechanics in Kisumu's Juakali district and has handed over his practice to his son. From Kisumu City, I am Fredo Mulo.
Dreaming big never does any harm. You can ask Josephat Munai, who has indeed won a seat in Vihiga. Now, the Transitional Authority has reassured the provincial administration across the country of the safety of their positions even as the devolved government takes over. Now, the chairman of the Transitional Authority, Kinodhia Wamwangi, has also dismissed the wrangles over county offices as a storm in a teacup, cautioning governors-elect not to engage in the fight over offices with members of the provincial administration.
While the Transition Authority says it is clearly focused on ensuring that the devolution process not only continues uninterrupted, but is efficiently and effectively implemented in accordance with the Constitution, the authority is facing serious challenges in identifying officers for the governors-elect, their deputies and county assemblies chambers. In some counties, there is a push to have the governors-elect and their teams to move into offices formerly occupied by the provincial and/or district commissioners.
By December, we had identified offices for every governor and for every assembly. But it's not in our control when a governor says, this office is not of my status. When the governors came in, they thought that the provincial administration is abolished. And therefore, all the buildings and properties belonging to provincial administration belonged to the county government. The provincial administration was not abolished. It was restructured.
In some counties, renovation is ongoing on some of the dilapidated municipal and town council offices to house county assemblies. But then, apart from debating chambers, some governors and their deputies lack official residences and will be forced to commute from their homes, some of which could be over 50 kilometers away.
I'm sure before we swear in the governors, each team will guarantee us that they have identified an office for the governors. As for the houses, the governors are entitled to housing allowance in the new salary structure, but all the same, we still are determined to put up residences for governors and maybe deputy governors and speakers, but this is for later.
And welcome to the day's business report. My name is Boni Tunya. Affordable fertilizer and seeds will be available to farmers beginning next week, following a release of 2.7 billion shillings by Treasury towards procurement. Now, this will see farmers breathe ease as the planting season begins. Philip Ketani has more.
Farmers from across the country had raised the red flag over the lack of fertilizer as well as increased cost of farm inputs in the last week. This, they said, had posed challenges in securing enough harvest for the country in the future. According to Treasury and the Ministry of Agriculture, some 2.7 billion shillings have now been disbursed to procure fertilizer for the farming community. The release follows a directive on Wednesday by President Kibaki as a response to the farmers' outcry. The President had also directed that the relevant ministries ensure that maize seedlings are made available to farmers at affordable prices. While meeting Deputy President-elect William Ruto, Treasury officials also noted that they had released another 450 million shillings to assist seed company sell maize at subsidized prices.
Wakulima wote ambao hawajalipwa zaidi ya milioni 390 tayari Wizara ya Special Programs imefanya mpango kulipa pesa hizo kufikia wiki ijayo. Kila mkulima atakuwa amelipa pesa zake.
With Treasury assurance, farmers will now from next week purchase fertilizer at between 2,500 shillings and 4,500 shillings per 50 kilogram bag, and maize seeds at between 3,400 shillings for a 25 kilogram bag, down from the 4,500 shillings. As it is, a number of farmers had already missed the planting season due to difficulty in accessing farm inputs. Kenya can only hope for a steady weather to guarantee good harvest to secure food stock for the country. Philip Ketan, KTN Business Today.
Now, you haven't paid your HELB loan, and this is for you. The Higher Education Loans Board, HELB, is considering alternative sources of funding to bridge the growing deficit occasioned by loan defaulters, while needy cases are still on the rise. Joy Dorin Bira has a story.
The Higher Education Loans Board, HELB, that has since its commencement dished out 39.5 billion shillings in student loans, faces a challenge in further financing students in need of loans due to the slow repayment process by students. The board is now coming up with innovative ways to finance these loans furthermore.
We are looking for donors, and donors, we are selling a very simple proposition which they have never had before. Donors, when they give money, nobody pays back money, isn't it? For the first time, we want to give donors a model of sustainability. We want to tell them, give us $1 billion, we will pay you at 1%.
At 400,000 students, most of whom have been released to the job market, are required to make payment in installments, but according to the board, not all beneficiaries are complying to the loan's requirement.
This year, we gave out 5.1 billion. We recovered from past loanees 2.5 billion, and we got from state 2.1 billion. So you can see the blend of mix. Now next year, won't be recovering. This year we are targeting to recover 3 billion from past loanees, and we have applied the state to give us about 14.8 billion, so that 12.8 billion will be going specifically to the universities.
I think they should be considerate to maybe the people who don't get a job immediately they leave campus. I'm lucky I have one, so to me 1 year is fair to me, but to someone who doesn't have a job, 1 year is not fair.
President Mwai Kibaki not so long ago gave charters to 8 institutions, bringing the number of public universities to 22, of which more duty is leveled on the loans boards.
As more students continue to graduate from higher institutions of learning, the Higher Education Loans Board requires that those who have taken student loans make payment a year after graduation. But an increasing number of graduates are finding it hard, with the unemployment rate at 40%, yet the Loans Board needs to recover this money in order to facilitate students in financial need. Joy Doreen Bira, KTN Business Today.
Thanks, Joy. Now, fishing as a form of livelihood is synonymous with the lakeside regions, but it was officially introduced as an economic activity to the people of central Kenya so that it could supplement their income. Now, this was done in 2009-2010 as part of the projects under the economic stimulus package. However, the project has had its fair share of challenges, and even though it has been largely successful, the idea is yet to be embraced fully by the central Kenya residents, as evidenced by drying fish ponds in some parts of Nyeri. Karo Nderi brings us the story.
Traditionally, fishing in central Kenya has been an alien concept in an area where lakes are a rare sight. But this has been changing gradually as people in the region slowly embrace fishing as a means of generating income as well as supplementing their diet. This economic activity was boosted in 2009 when a program under the economic stimulus package was initiated in central Kenya, where 300 farmers in each of the 29 constituencies in central Kenya were facilitated to construct fish ponds in the area. Each fish pond cost about 25,000 shillings for construction, and each farmer was given 1,000 fingerlings as a startup. The provincial officer in charge of fisheries in central Kenya, Japhet Bolo, says this was supposed to encourage farmers to embrace alternative means of sustaining themselves.
The government has assisted farmers starting the year 09-10.
However, according to Bolo, only 70% of those assisted have taken the project to the next level, as 30% fell on the wayside. This was in response to our query why some of the fish ponds under the project have seemingly dried up. These are ponds in the Ngangarithi area of Nyeri, just 10 minutes away from Nyeri town. Ponds that are in different stages of drying up, while others seem to lack any life in them. This is supposed to be a fish pond, definitely containing fish. But instead it is a patch of dry land that has grass and an overgrowth of weeds, and those mandated to take care of this fish pond that should be a source of livelihood for many are either sleeping on the job or definitely there is a problem.
Of those 300, I think about 70% are moving on. Another 30% may be having their own challenges. Some that may be due to flooding and drought. Others may be because of challenges due to the farmers' own management.
Bolo says the mandate of the government was to facilitate the farmers initially and encourage them, but not entirely cater for the project, and the failure of some should be solely attributed to the farmers and not the government. Many other farmers have been successful, especially in Sagana area. Carol Derry for KTN in Nyeri County.
And now across the borders, where Twitter is celebrating its 7th birthday, and the new pope is to celebrate Mass by washing prisoners' feet. Our Worldview is up next. Well, finally, let's take a look at how your money is working for you in the Money Market Report coming up.
Welcome to KTN Sports Today, and we start off with this story that has had discussions throughout, and I'm gonna let you in on what is happening today on the social media in a while. But first, Football Kenya Federation has written an official complaint letter to their counterparts, the Nigerian Football Federation, on the ill treatment of the national soccer team Harambee Stars in Lagos on Wednesday. The Stars missed their flight to the Nigerian city of Calabar and trained under deplorable conditions as they prepare to play hosts in this weekend's FIFA World Cup qualifiers.
These are the pictures that the country woke up to regarding the reception and treatment of the national team Harambee Stars soon after arriving in Lagos, Nigeria, for a crucial World Cup qualifier on Saturday. Contrary to the earlier itinerary where the Stars were to connect to Calabar City from Lagos, but that did not happen. What happened is the Stars were booked into a 2-star hotel, and that was not all. The team had to make do with the dusty strip in between buildings. Kenyans on social media poured their anger on the Nigerian Football Federation. FKF on its part was categorical in its address to its equivalent in the West African country.
They were looking for a ground to train. They were not given any ground to train. They were very frustrated. When it came to food, our boys were not even able to get good food yesterday. I have raised that matter with the Federation and CAF and also FIFA.
The team did fly to Calabar, arriving at 4 p.m. Kenyan time. But reports from the Stars camp indicate that the team was not given any training facility and were left on their own. Coach Adel Amrushe, like many Kenyans, reads malice in the whole issue, and the Federation will not let the issue rest until they get answers from the NFF.
We have a lot of communication from Nigeria every day. We send almost twice emails almost every day. And in fact, it's also very interesting that it's a very junior officer who has been communicating to us, not the president of the Federation. Very junior officer. He's talking that I've been directed, you remember? I've been directed to tell you this and that. I've been directed to do this and that. We have been communicating, and number two, we have also been communicating.
CAF and FIFA rules dictate that the hosting federation must take charge of their visiting teams, including booking them in at least a 4-star hotel, offer them adequate security, and accord them access to a standard training field. The Kenyan government has dispatched Sports Commissioner Gordon Lodge to be with the team. Kenyan ambassador to Nigeria had a meeting with the Nigerian Sports Minister on the matter. In the meantime, Anil Origi and Chris Bobby have joined the Stars in Nigeria ahead of the qualifier. Reporting for KTN Sports Today, I'm Hassan Juma.
Well, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that perhaps was the reason Kenyans online, Kenyans on Twitter, took to the social media to register their displeasure with the way Harambee Stars has been treated so far in Nigeria, and that led to a very robust discussion on Twitter today. Kenyans started by trending a hashtag "Someone Tell Nigeria" just to express their displeasure with the team's handling, and a lot of things went into what Kenyans said. On the other hand, Nigerians responded by saying "Someone Tell Kenya." That's a hashtag on Twitter, and that is something that is continuing at this particular time. Perhaps someone should tell Nigeria that Kenya this weekend has a team in the IRB 7 circuit in Hong Kong, a team in the World Cross Country Championship, and a team playing in Nigeria. Moving on, Kenya will have a dress rehearsal for hosting the Africa Cup of Nations when they play host to 2 top European clubs in the inaugural Kenya Magic Cup. Football Kenya Federation has partnered with European Sports Marketing Open Side in launching the Kenya Magic Cup to be played in Kenya this July. The two European teams will be announced in a month's time. The tournament will be played at the Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, and we'll see local fans welcoming teams and players that have over the years given Kenya a cold shoulder and instead moving to South Africa and West Africa. Although details of the two teams remain scanty, reports indicate that English giants Arsenal and Bundesliga side Bayern Munich could be the two teams that may just come to Kenya.
In our discussions of the past few months, there's been a process of educating the leading European clubs that they can come to Kenya. The facilities are in place. It's a secure environment, politically, infrastructure's in place. It's safe for them to come. We also need teams that are, to be blunt, going to sell broadcast. We need interest globally in this event. So there is a balance to have between what we're willing to pay and what we can raise from the revenues from having the appropriate.
It's not possible to mention the clubs now. So don't ask which are these clubs because of the confidentiality clause. When you are negotiating with the Premier League clubs, and you don't, if you do, they will be very disappointed. That one will be mentioned, as our brother said, in about 4 weeks' time. In 4 weeks' time.